Welcome to the second part of the EVM Scalability series. In the first part, we touched on the history of EVM. When the Office of Management and Budget mandated EVM for all the agencies, it became necessary to tailor its implementation for smaller projects, leading to the development of the NDIA Scalability Guide. As agencies gained experience, they used the guide to develop guidance for their projects. Now that we have talked about the theory of scalability, we will shift gears and share some practical examples. If you have any questions, be sure and write them down because all of our speakers will participate in a closing panel to answer those questions. First, we're going to hear from Paul Tackett. Paul is an EVM subject matter expert in the field of EVMS surveillance. Paul will be discussing how he led a team of EVM practitioners in developing guidance for the Department of Energy and the Energy Facility Contractors Group, otherwise known as the FCOG. This guidance can be utilized to categorize projects according to size, complexity, and risk. Categorizing projects according to size, complexity, and risk facilitates identifying opportunities to appropriately scale EVM concepts. Paul also discusses examples for right-sizing rigor in nearly all of the scaling categories I briefed earlier. I'm confident you'll find his presentation informative and useful.
Hello, my name is Paul Tackett. I'm a surveillance officer for CNS in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, supporting EVMS compliance for our large cost reimbursed projects. I have been involved with 3 large project certification efforts, 2 with DoD and 1 most recently with DOE. The requirements for our fully compliant system, as documented in our system description, represent an evolution of lessons learned based upon the experience of our team under the leadership of DOE PM30. While my focus has been implementing requirements defined in our fully compliant EVMS, there has been growing interest to define a set of tailored EVMS concepts that would provide the best value for smaller projects. About a year ago, I started a team within FCOG to evaluate EVMS concepts that have the most value for smaller cost reimbursable projects, less than 50 million, and where full EVMS compliance is not required per DOE Order 413.3b. The goal of our FCOG group was to build on the foundation established by NDIA. While NDIA did a great job identifying the value and of adding EVMS concepts with their scalability guide, our approach was to examine many of the requirements that are typically part of a fully certified system. Then utilize that list of concepts, the rules and the tools, to identify those that may provide the best value. This guide provides a roadmap for a company to select concepts based upon size, complexity, or risk. Large DOE contractors often have a mix of large cost reimbursable projects with full EVMS requirements and smaller projects. Management is familiar with using EVMS and seeks consistency in project reporting, recognizing that mandating full EVMS requirements on smaller projects is expensive and may not be necessary. The team assembled virtually over 9 months to identify, review, and grade each concept organized by EVMS process area. As mentioned on the last slide, our goal was not to replace the educational value of the NDIA guide. Our approach was to start with the prerequisite that the reader understands requirements typically associated with a fully certified system within DOE. By not repeating content, we spent more time with each of the EVMS concepts. Shown here are the steps the team followed. We completed our review of the white paper in October, and it is, or will be shortly, posted to the FCOG website. Our team listed common requirements, but also less common requirements, such as the use of 0 budgeted activities within the schedule, or defining the use of quantifiable backup data for activities over 44 days duration. These less common requirements often provide incremental value, but may also carry implementation and maintenance costs. The team assessed all these concepts individually, utilizing a rating between 1 and 5 for 3 types of projects. These types of projects were those less than 10 million with low consequence. These projects consider a minimum threshold. While a low-end dollar value is never determined, most projects where these tools made sense would be at the higher end of this range. Projects between 10 and 50 million with low risk. These projects typically have an intermediate rating of the concept applicability. This group is where execution risk and potential impact of performance issues are lower compared to other projects of similar size. Projects between 10 and 50 million with higher risk. These typically rank the highest for the concept application, which made sense because we are approaching the limit where full EVMS is required. While completing this rating process, high-value concepts were flagged as key, indicating the concept is in a group that were foundational and should be considered in some form regardless of project size or risk. Concepts that have a mixed value were tagged with tailorable. These are areas with the most potential for adjustment or deletion. In each case, the concept includes a discussion of the rating and suggestions for tailoring. Concept scores create the ranking intended to guide tool selection. A score of 1 at the bottom of the page indicates minimal value. It's worth noting that none of the concepts ranked a 1. We did have several that ranked 2, mostly on projects less than 10 million. While these should be considered, most have a significant chance of being trimmed or eliminated based upon complexity or expense. Many tailorable concepts ranked a 3, indicating these should be strongly considered in some fashion. Concepts ranking a 4 are often foundational or key. These should be included, however, significant adjustment may still be warranted. For example, having a WBS dictionary that defines scope and organization is foundational and should be included. Maintenance of the WBSD for changes may not add enough value if the scope is well documented and adequately reflected in the baseline schedule. For smaller, shorter projects, the rigor of maintaining the WBSD may be a duplication of effort and thus be a candidate for removal. Note that removal of the WBSD is only warranted if the objective can be satisfied in another way. Concepts ranked a 5 are normally foundational, especially if as a 5 for all size projects. A rating of 5 does not, however, indicate the same level of rigor that would be applied in a fully compliant system. An example of this is change control. All projects are encouraged to have documented baseline change control. Change package content and approval authority may be tailored. The white paper on the FCOG site includes an introduction and description of the process. It also includes a discussion of key and tailorable concepts, as well as the full matrix of concepts used in the evaluation process. This is a sample of the matrix from the paper. The matrix is organized by process group with key concepts listed first, followed by tailorable ones. Looking at the organization process group on this page, there are 3 key requirements with a score of 5 for all project sizes. Note that even for a key concept, tailoring may be warranted for efficiency. This is explained in the comments section. We rated over 50 concepts in this matrix, and there are more, oh yes. This was our attempt to pick items most likely to add value. These foundational concepts should look familiar to most EVMS practitioners. Organizing scope by WBS, utilizing a project schedule, and requiring work authorization bubble up as foundational. Having meaningful earned value and associating actual costs of work performed is also foundational, as no EVMS will work without a structure that allows comparison of BCWS, BCWP, and ACWP. Note that adequate rigor is needed. Some advanced concepts, like estimated actuals, for costs not reflected by the accounting system, should be considered only if the accounting system cannot provide the ACWP to an acceptable level of accuracy for the period reviewed. One of the most valued benefits of a well-run EVMS is the ability to have a meaningful estimate at completion. All projects, regardless of size, must consider performance to date, as well as identified trends and risks in their EAC. The EAC should always be actuals to date, plus an estimate to complete on known scope. Comparing the cumulative CPI with the TCPI for the remaining scope is a high-value metric used to assess the reasonableness of the EAC. Maintaining a clear understanding of authorized scope is essential to project management. While the process rigor may vary, documenting changes to the baseline with a set of documented rules is a foundational concept for all projects and enables meaningful analysis of performance. The last foundational concept identified may seem out of place, but any defined set of management tools based upon EVMS concepts must include a process to educate the team. In addition, periodic evaluation of compliance to the defined system is useful to ensure consistency with identified gaps that may impact the quality of the output. While this is a typical requirement for a fully compliant EVMS, a streamlined version of this guidance and governance role remains value added, even for smaller projects. Okay, we just discussed foundational concepts. Now we will explore the rules and tools that have the most opportunity for tailoring. Organizing. Our recommendations regarding simplifying the WBS or use of the WBSD align pretty closely with the NDIA guide. Planning, scheduling, and budgeting. This is where we really expand on the foundation in the NDIA guide. How about creative options for time phasing budget or logic rules where the PM can customize the schedule, like the use of zero budgeted activities? We introduced several options to load budget on longer duration activities as long as the budget is loaded in a way that models the expected execution. For budgeting and work authorization on small projects, the PM may function as the single CAM, recognizing the PM may have less control of the resources, relying on a matrix organization. Even allowing the entire project to be a single control account is often an option. Normally, rules would prohibit significant mixing of LOE and discrete at the control account level. If warranted, based on the project size and the ability to analyze contributors at the work package level, this may be an adequate solution to simplify reporting. Work authorization remains foundational, but may be implemented more simply using a single page that defines control account scope, schedule, and budget. For fully compliant systems, there is significant rigor for the definition of earned value techniques. Any system, even tailored, must provide meaningful earned value. Targeted reduction of these requirements has merit if the objective measurement can be achieved. For accounting, our recommendations are similar to NDIA. Note that a fully compliant EVMS typically uses a separate cost processor to achieve alignment between scope, schedule, budget, and implement changes. A foundational concept is to have ACWP properly associated with BCWP. Creating a manual process and threshold for use of estimated actuals is a minimum recommendation to achieve this alignment. Mapping accounting details into simple elements of cost, such as labor, non-labor, may suffice. Our recommendations for analysis and management reporting focus on crisp variance analysis and generating a meaningful EAC. Variance analysis is often a weakness in a certified system. Defining expectations through training and use of a checklist is a path for both a fully compliant system and a tailored approach. The only difference is the level of rigor. Deleting the EVMS action tracking process may be more efficient if the project has an existing system. The process used to analyze performance and predict the future is largely the same. Because smaller projects are typically shorter, annual EACs are typically not required. Change control for a fully compliant system has evolved into a complex set of rules intended to encourage forward planning and police potential abuse of MR. For smaller projects, basic procedures and training are still required. But approval of replanning or use of MR may be administratively done internally with added flexibility based on project objectives. An example of this are the freeze period rules intended to foster stability of the near-term baseline. If variance analysis thresholds are applied only for cumulative variances, the need for freeze period restrictions is less important. If rules can be defined that enable meaningful variances, there's room to simplify the process. When managing materials and subcontracts, fully compliant systems within DOE utilize the concept of high dollar value for those subcontracted efforts requiring alignment and added visibility. The concept of retaining this visibility is foundational. The method to achieve it can be customized based upon where there is project risk. Assessing scope, schedule, and programmatic risk is a requirement for all projects. This process will define management reserve and schedule reserve needed to achieve project objectives. Normally, the process used to determine these values are specialized and complicated. Alternate approaches, like an educated management assessment, may be adequate. Examining the suite of concepts and tools typically required for a fully compliant EVMS results in determining that most concepts have at least some value for small projects. When examining both the foundational and tailorable concepts, none of the 32 EVMS guidelines were abandoned. The combination of foundational and tailorable concepts still support the basic intent of the 32 guidelines. Most of the concepts that are candidates for tailoring relax the rigor or simplify the structure. Take Guideline 9, for example, that states, establish budgets for authorized work with identification of significant cost elements, labor, material, etc., as needed for internal management and for control of subcontractors. Tailoring EOCs to include only labor and non-labor may be adequate to manage the project. The team had discussions about defining additional categories of project size and risk. Ultimately, we kept with the original 3 selected. Larger projects near the top of the range started to look very similar to what would be expected with a fully compliant system. It is also clear that very small projects, well below the lowest $10 million threshold, have substantially more opportunities to tailor. The decision on tools for any EVMS reminds us of the language found in EIA 748 that states, first and foremost, the system must meet the organization's needs and good business practices. Keeping this principle in mind, the concepts and tools documented for use must align with existing systems and satisfy both the company and the customer. The role of EVMS oversight, which is integral to a fully compliant DOE EVMS, continues to play a role with a tailored system. Assessment of skills and education of the team on basic EVMS objectives and mechanics will foster confidence in the process and ultimately improve management decisions. Questions for this presentation and others related to EVMS tailoring will be addressed in the live panel discussion. Thank you.
I especially like the emphasis that, first and foremost, the EVMS must meet organizational needs, something I referred to earlier as stakeholder value, as well as good business practices. Next, we will hear from Xiaofan Gu. Xiaofan plays a special role with the National Science Foundation as she oversees a variety of very interesting and unique projects that vary significantly in size, complexity, and risk. Xiaofan will discuss how the NSF has scaled EVM concepts in the categories of structures, processes, documentation, and data detail. As you will hear, the success of NSF's approach to scaling EVM concepts is heavily based on collaboration and teamwork during all phases of a project's life cycle. As a bonus, you will learn what an attosecond is. Fascinating stuff.
Hello. Today I will share with you NSF's EVM tailoring and scaling practice in managing science projects. The science projects are exploratory by nature. They are often one of a kind and pioneering in technology. That means there are limited historical data available for reference when we plan for these projects. These projects also require extremely specialized technical expertise to carry out the project activities. Big science projects often involve large science collaborations. The large number of collaborating institutions in the project team means the project needs to manage a very complex schedule and technical interfaces. Sometimes these collaborations also involve international collaborations. In such cases, the project schedule and technical interfaces will be affected and constrained by activities of collaborating institutions in other countries. NSF's science projects cover a wide range of size, complexity, technical nature across different scientific disciplines. When managing these projects, we need to tailor and scale EVMS to suit the unique characteristics of each project in order to truly benefit from EVM methodology. Therefore, NSF's management process and guidelines emphasize tailoring and scaling of EVM based on each project's unique aspects. Before I start to discuss examples of projects in NSF, let me first explain to you NSF's definition on EVM tailoring and scaling. At NSF, EVM tailoring means we address all of the 32 EIA 748 guidelines, but make adjustment in the application of guidelines to fit the project's characteristics. NSF also established guidelines for EVM scaling for smaller or less complex projects. NSF's EVM scaling focuses on the 7 basic EVM principles and implement a subset of the 32 guidelines that are essential for management and oversight. The 7 basic principles of EVMS can be summarized as follows. 1. Plan all the work. 2. Break down the work scope into finite pieces. Use work breakdown structure to organize the project and assign a responsible person or organization for each WBS element. 3. Integrate the work scope, schedule, and cost into a performance measurement baseline and control the change to a baseline. 4. Record the actual cost and work progress. 5. Objectively assess the accomplishment against the baseline plan. 6. Analyze significant variance from the plan, forecast impacts, and prepare an estimate at completion. 7. Use the EVMS information in the management process. NSF established the scaled EVM based on the consideration that the smaller projects have limited resources. They are less complex and do not require the same level of data detail or control rigor like the large projects. This diagram here illustrates the relation between NSF scaled EVM and the EVMS with full implementation of 32 guidelines. The scaled EVM reduces the administrative burden and makes EVM more accessible to a wider range of projects. It allows projects to use EVM as a beneficial tool in project planning, performance management, and risk control. At NSF, the EVM tailoring practice includes 3 key aspects. The first one is NSF established a process for parallel development of the project baseline and EVMS. The development process includes a series of independent project reviews. The second is NSF performs EVMS verification and acceptance for the project. We do not do EVM certification for an organization. Third, NSF conducts the EVMS surveillance concurrently with technical progress reviews. The EVMS review team can obtain input from the technical experts in the review. The baseline and EVMS development process is an iterative process with input from the external review panels. The review panels consist of the leading scientific and technical experts for each subsystem of the proposed project and EVMS experts. The panel review is a joint evaluation of the project by technical experts and EVMS experts. The panel evaluates the project's science case, technical approach, cost and schedule estimate, and the EVMS framework. The review is collaborative in nature. The panel provides constructive feedback to the project, and the review report serves as basis for NSF's guidance to the project. This diagram here illustrates the baseline and EVMS development process for major facilities projects at NSF. It includes 3 development phases: the conceptual design phase, the preliminary design phase, and the final design phase. At the end of each development phase, there's a stage gate review. Successfully passing the stage gate review is a prerequisite for the project to proceed to the next development stage. During the conceptual design phase, the project develops the overall scope, defines the high-level WBS, and the system functional requirements. The project also comes up with a rough estimate of schedule and cost. After successfully passing a conceptual design review, the project incorporates the review recommendations and proceeds to the preliminary design stage. During the preliminary design phase, the project developed more detailed, established detailed WBS, starts prototype work, develop more detailed design with bottom-up cost and schedule estimate for each WBS. The EVMS framework is also developed during this phase. After passing the preliminary design review, the project incorporates the review recommendations and proceeds to final design stage. And the final design review, the project should have a fully developed baseline, a complete detailed design, ready to start construction. The EVMS process will be fully established to support the project construction execution. This development process allows the EVMS to be established coherently with the project baseline development. The stage gate reviews ensure the project adheres to EVMS standards while tailoring EVMS to suit the project's unique needs and aspects. The baseline development and EVMS development process for mid-scale projects has a shortened development cycle. It is scaled down from the development process for major facilities projects. a mid-scale project undergoes reviews to obtain approval of overall project scope, cost, and preliminary project plan. After the approval, the project, we have a pre-award assessment period. During this period, the project refines their baseline under NSF guidance. The process is also iterative and can go through several refinement and discussion cycle before the award is made. The final baseline and refined project execution plan will be documented in the overall execution plan. NSF recognizes that the full implementation of 32 guidelines for mid-scale project will add unnecessary burden. Therefore, NSF developed a scaled EVM practice guide to support mid-scale project to use EVM as a management tool. NSF scaled EVM practice guide include 4 process areas. 1. Defining and organizing the project. 2. Establishing project cost, schedule, and contingency. 3. Progress and performance monitoring. 4. Management, analysis, and control. NSF scaled EVM apply 18 EVMS guidelines that directly support the 4 process areas. NSF only require formal EVMS acceptance for major facilities projects and does not require formal EVMS acceptance for mid-scale projects. For mid-scale projects, NSF conducts assistance reviews to guide the project to use scaled EVM as a tool and optimize the benefits. There are several good practices in NSF project development process. The first is the management guidance involved early, starting from establishing the project's WBS. The second, the development process is also a team building process. During the development process, we guide and help the technical team master EVMS concepts. At the meantime, the reviewers also learn about the project's technical work and provide constructive recommendations to the project. As a result, the input and evaluation of the project are from people who understand the project, and the technical team learned to adopt EVM methodology for project execution. NSF's EVM as verification and acceptance for the project is another in NSF's EVMS implementation. Because we do verification and acceptance for the project instead of for the whole organization, we are able to tailor the application of EVMS guidelines for the project to fit the project's unique aspect. The EVMS verification review project process for generating reliable and timely performance data. The EVMS review is also a collaborative and iterative process for a project. The review team provides guidance on EVMS based on the project team's EV maturity level. The project EVMS can evolve from not accepted to conditional acceptance and finally to full acceptance. Our technical team have highly specialized technical expertise that are very difficult to replace. Therefore, it is not constructive and not beneficial either to simply reject a project team because they do not have good EVMS. We need to guide and nurture our project team to follow the EVMS guidelines in order to ensure success in our science projects. After a project starts construction, NSF conducts EVMS surveillance. The EVMS surveillance is done concurrently with the technical progress review. During the such surveillance review, the EVMS team can receive input from technical experts to give independent verification for the project's EV data. This way, NSF will have confidence in the use of EVM data for agency oversight. Next, I will show you a few examples of EVM tailoring and scaling in managing science projects at NSF. The first example is the Large Hadron Collider high luminosity upgrades for CMS and ATLAS detectors at CERN. These are large projects with international collaboration. The ATLAS collaboration consists of 3,000 scientists from 183 institutions in 38 countries. CMS collaboration consists of 4,000 scientists from 200 institutions in 40 countries. The detectors record collisions of particles traveling near the speed of light with the rate of 1 billion interactions per second. Such a rate is equivalent to 20 simultaneous telephone conversations held by every person on the Earth. The detectors enable scientists to explore the fundamental forces governing the most basic building blocks of matter. Both projects have a project office in their respective host institutions to allow centralized management for the project. Because of the large number of collaborating institutions in the project team, apply the EVMS guidelines on indirect rates. Each institution has its own indirect rate structure, and the indirect rate structure is not determined by the project. Indirect rates also differ in different institutions. At the same time, each institution may contribute to different parts in different subsystems of the project. Therefore, the indirect rates for different WBS are different. To overcome this challenge, the project have to use fully burdened resource rates in their resource-loaded schedule, and the project only monitors the indirect rates for each institution in the collaboration team. Another challenge in applying EVMS to this project is the complications in setting WBS and control accounts, because the subsystems consist of multiple sub-deliverables with unique and highly specialized technical demands. Institution contributions to the project are based on their technical expertise and capabilities. That means one institution can have several parts belong to different subsystems. As a result, the relation between the work breakdown structure and the institution responsibility assignments can be very complicated. It is not a simple one-to-one correspondence. To overcome this challenge, ATLAS established the WBS net, took into account both the deliverables breakdown structure and the institution assignment structure, and set the control accounts at sub-deliverable level. But CMS takes a different approach. The CMS WBS follows the subsystem and deliverable structure only. At the same time, they establish the system of institutional task tracking codes to accompany their WBS. In both cases, the projects are able to ensure proper tracking of institution contributions in control accounts. The next example is the National Extreme Ultra-Fast Science Facility Project, the NEXUS. The NEXUS is a much smaller light source than the accelerator-based light source, such as LINIAC Coherent Light Source at Stanford Linear Accelerator Center. The NEXUS enables scientists to study electron dynamics in molecules and solids at the attosecond scale. Here, I would like to explain what attosecond scale means. An attosecond to a second is 1 second to roughly the age of the universe. The NEXUS project consists of a high-powered ultra-fast laser, 3 beam lines, and 4 end stations. It is a mid-scale project. We use scaled EVM to manage this project. The scaling approach includes we first set the WBS to level 3 only, and the control accounts are set at WBS level 2. There are total 8 level 2 the control accounts. We use the summary level task in the resource loaded schedule plus milestones. There are total about 230 summary level tasks, not including the milestones. And for project reporting, we require monthly report from the project. The monthly report only contains the EVMS data like cumulative planned value, cumulative earned value, actual cost, cost performance indices, and schedule performance indices. For quarterly report, we require the report contains narratives on technical progress and emerging issues with updates of project risk in addition to the EVM data. Then annually, we will hold external panel review on the project. The variance analysis is required when there's 10% or more deviation from the baseline for each level 2 WBS. The project documentation includes project execution plan, risk register, the baseline documents, change log. Another example of mid-scale project is the design of the next generation Event Horizon Telescope. The Event Horizon Telescope enables scientists to study Einstein's theory of general relativity and black holes. It recorded the first real image of a black hole in April 2019. The next generation of Event Horizon Telescope will combine radio dishes around the world to form an Earth-sized virtual telescope. It will align signals to create real-time movies of black holes. NSF funds the design of the next generation Event Horizon Telescope. The entire work scope for this project is design effort. The scaled approach we took is to set performance control at WBS level 2. Under each level 2 WBS, we have summary tasks with milestones to monitor the progress. For project reporting, we require monthly phone meetings with NSF program officers, but the project is required to have written quarterly report. In the quarterly report, the project reports progress status of milestones. The status of milestones includes 3 categories: completed, in progress, as planned, or delays with cost and schedule impact estimate. The report also includes narratives on technical progress and emerging issues. The project documents their WBS baseline, risk register, and management process in the project execution plan. Through this discussion, I hope I have showed you that EVM tailoring and scaling are important when using EVMS in managing science projects. Proper tailoring and scaling of EVM are necessary for projects to truly benefit from EVM methodology. The scaled EVM provides a sound management tool with more flexibility and less administrative burden. The EVM scaling makes the EVM methodology more accessible to a wider range of projects. And EVM tailoring and scaling opened a new practice area for project management. More projects will benefit from EVM methodology with EVM tailoring and scaling practices. Thank you.
Xiaofen has shared the NSF's approaches to scalability. Both Paul and Xiaofen gave our participants excellent advice for making EVM concepts useful and applicable to projects of any size and complexity. In the next segment, Rebecca Yaski from the NSF will join Paul, Xiaofen, Wayne, and me for an open panel discussion moderated by Mr. Neil Albert.